Yo, what is up guys, Delboy here. A quick preview and prediction for Dereck Chisora versus David Price. This fight goes down on the 26th of October, takes place at the O2 Arena in London, and it is on the undercard of Josh Taylor versus Regis Prograis. A fun heavyweight fight, no doubt about it. Obviously Dereck Chisora originally was supposed to fight Joseph Parker. That would have been a better fight, but obviously Joseph Parker contracted an illness by getting bitten by a spider, so in comes replacement David Price. But like I said, it's a fun fight and a fight I'm looking forward to. Let's briefly break down the tale of the tape and go through the records, etc, etc. We will start with Dereck Chisora. He has a record of 31 wins, 9 defeats, 22 of those 31 wins coming by way of knockout. David Price has a record of 25 wins, 6 defeats. 20 of David Price's 25 wins come by way of stoppage. Dereck Chisora, he is listed as 6'1.5" with a 74-inch reach, whereas David Price is listed as 6'8" with an 82-inch reach. So David Price has a 6.5-inch height advantage, and he also has a significant reach advantage of 8 inches. So David Price is the taller, longer man. Will that be a factor on fight night? Potentially. If David Price is to win this fight, it needs to be, put it that way. And David Price all around is just the bigger heavyweight, obviously. So David Price does have a significant size advantage going into this fight. In regards to the experience of both men, both guys have fought pretty good competition over the years, but Dereck Chisora, win, lose or draw, and let's get it straight, they've mostly been losses, but Dereck Chisora has acquitted himself much better at world level in comparison to David Price. When David Price has stepped up in the past, he's always been stopped. Let's be honest about it. So Dereck has shown better form at a higher level in comparison to David Price. But let's talk about the style clash. You know, Dereck Chisora, we've seen him fight 1,000,001 times. He doesn't really bring anything new to the table. He will be applying that pressure. He will be marching forwards, looking for big body shots, and he will be looking to cut the ring off on David Price, wear him out, and then take him out. You know, Chisora in recent months, or recent fights I should say, one thing I will say, he's actually developed better punch technique. You know, if you watched Chisora earlier on in his career, he had a habit of slapping with his punches. These days, he is actually starting to turn over his shots a lot more, and as a result, it's produced some very good knockouts from Dereck Chisora. So, while his style hasn't changed, he's actually brushed up on a few things in his game, and I actually think that makes Chisora a more dangerous fighter. I know Chisora is, 34, 35 years old, and he's off the back of several hard fights, but I think this is the best Chisora we've seen for quite some time, and that is mainly due to the improved punch technique, in my opinion, and his conditioning seems slightly better as well these days. And to be honest with you, all around, even without these improvements, for me stylistically he's a terrible matchup for David Price. You know, he brings that pressure, he's durable, he's rugged, he'll work the body, he'll come back up top with headshots, and I believe the pressure he brings, chances are, will break David Price. We've seen David Price struggle with pressure guys in the past. You know, you can go back to the fight against Christian Hammer. Christian Hammer, I would say, is a good European level pressure fighter. David Price started that fight really well. He dropped Christian Hammer, but once Christian Hammer kept on coming and he wasn't going anywhere, David Price capitulated and then he got stopped. He also got bowled over by Erkan Tepe. He got blitzed by Alexander Povetkin. Again, another fight he started well in, but the pressure of Povetkin and the pace Povetkin was bringing was too much. The bodywork of Povetkin in particular really slowed David Price down in that fight. And even the Sergey Kuzmin fight, although Price didn't technically get knocked out, he kind of retired on his stool with an injury. You could tell the writing was on the wall. He started well, he was boxing quite well against Kuzmin, but once Kuzmin wasn't going anywhere, and once he was applying steady pressure, you could see the writing was on the wall. My point being, if you have followed the career of David Price, it's painfully obvious this man struggles with pressure. He struggles with durable guys who keep coming forwards and applying that mental pressure. He struggles with that. And that's exactly what Dereck Chisora is going to do. So obviously I make Dereck Chisora, from a style point of view, a big favourite in this fight. That doesn't go to say this fight is unwinnable for David Price. David Price does hit hard. He carries genuine power in that right hand. Sometimes I think his power gets a little overrated, but I do believe he hits hard enough to knock anybody out on his given day. After all, this is the heavyweight division, and he is a big lump. Not only that, Chisora has been hurt early in fights in the past. He got hurt against Dillian Whyte early on in their second fight. He got hurt by Andre Parla early on in their fight. He got hurt early on by Robert Helenius in their fight. So, maybe there's a slight possibility that David Price could catch Dereck Chisora cold in this fight, and I believe that is the best chance he's got. I just don't think David Price has it in him to go the distance in this fight, and the longer it does go, the less likely he is to knock out Dereck Chisora once he starts losing steam on those punches, once he starts to doubt himself. As this fight wears on, the chances of David Price getting a knockout win will be less and less and less. So for my money, David Price would have to do it fairly early on in the first 4, maybe 5 rounds. And there's a couple of shots David Price needs to look out for. Obviously, Dereck Chisora is a front foot heavy fighter. He likes to maraud forwards and apply that pressure, as we know. Dereck doesn't always have the best of defence. Back in the day, Dereck used to move his head quite a bit. These days, not so much. He moves it a bit, but, he's open for certain shots. The straight right hand. If David Price can kind of catch Chisora coming in with a straight right, who knows what could happen. Maybe David Price, as Chisora's coming forwards, he can throw a feint, take a half step back, as Dereck's coming in, land that long right hand to try and catch Chisora. Alternatively, there's the uppercut, which, David Price throws very well. Price has a very good uppercut, and we keep on saying this about certain pressure fighters, about keeping your head on centre line, and Dereck does that. He keeps his head on centre line as he comes forwards. Doesn't really come in at an angle, doesn't really move his head. So David Price, again, needs to look for that uppercut, because that's another shot that will be there for him. For me, David Price needs to knock out Dereck Chisora. And if there's an instance where he has Dereck hurt, he needs to finish him. And that's another problem, though, because although David Price is heavy-handed, I don't think he's a good finisher. If you look at some of the fights he's lost, Christian Hammer, for example, had the guy badly hurt, but couldn't finish him. Tony Thompson, in I believe the second fight, he dropped Thompson, hurt him, but again, couldn't finish. Hurt Povetkin, couldn't finish. So David will need to show something new. If he hurts Dereck Chisora, he needs to show that finishing instinct. If it gets to that part, if it gets to that scenario, sorry. So there's little doubt in my mind David Price needs to win this fight by knockout. But do I expect it to happen? To be honest with you, no. I'm not saying it's out of the realms of possibility. You never know in the heavyweight division, but everything tells me Dereck Chisora wins this fight. I believe he might have to ride a few early storms out in the first 3 to 4 rounds, but once he gets past that stage, I believe he will slowly start to chop David Price down, and he will get a mid-round stoppage, maybe a stoppage in rounds 6, 7 or 8, something like that. So we've got Dereck Chisora to win this fight by stoppage. One thing to consider about Dereck, and it is a bit of a concern, is the fact that he will be cornering himself on fight night, and he's also going to be taking charge of the rest of his training camp. And with a hot-headed guy like Dereck Chisora, I don't think that's necessarily wise, but, that's what it is, Derek's being Derek. Will that be a factor? Who knows, but it's something to consider at least. But yeah, there we go. That's my preview and prediction for Chisora versus Price. We have Chisora by knockout. Share your thoughts below. Peace.